Hey everyone! So are you the type of person that reaches for comfort within uncomfortableness? Right? That probably landed pretty hard. And you're probably thinking, no, why would I do that? Well, you might be doing it subconsciously, right? So this little talk is kind of like bringing that to the surface, right? So here's what I mean. We all kind of do this, kind of in the most subtlest of ways and also in really big ways. So I'm going to talk about one of like the really big ways that we kind of find comfort within uncomfortableness. And again, this is nothing we do deliberately, but it happens, right? It happens because life is crazy, right? So, have you ever heard a person say, I'm just an anxious person, right? And when I hear people say that, I think to myself, no, you're not an anxious person. You are just a person. And when you say you're an anxious person, you're actually identifying with that quality. And then you're actually putting that in your identity and you're attaching yourself to that identity. And you're actually telling people, like, I'm an anxious person, right? But again, we didn't do this on purpose, right? Maybe at some point in our life, life just became hard. And it felt like, mountains were on top of us and everything, it spiraled and it caused us to be really anxious about everything. And then we become an anxious person, right? So once we're there, right? And once we've lived maybe a couple years, right? And then we start identifying as being anxious because we feel it. We feel it in our body. We feel it mentally. We feel it soulfully. And then, we start telling people, right? I'm just anxious, right? Know that life, right? If it puts it on us, we can also, identify it and take it off of us, right? So when I say we're finding comfort in the uncomfortableness, right? And we identify as an anxious person, what we're actually doing is never allowing ourselves to reside in peace or any other place that is naturally supposed to be comfortable for us. Because we've been that anxious person for so long that it becomes our norm, right? So if we're just sitting there and we're feeling peace, then we start to get like, this isn't right, right? This doesn't feel normal to me. So we start looking for things to make us anxious, right? And it's crazy, right? But we do this all the time. And this is just one example of one of the things that we could be identifying as, right? So we find comfort there, right? So we keep going back there and we keep creating this place for us to reside in where we're like, I need to feel anxious to feel like myself, right? To feel like that anxious person. So we don't have to do any of this, right? Once we identify it, because again, we do this, over time, right? If we don't check in over time, again, it just becomes who we are, right? Who we identify as. Right? Then we need to start reversing it. We need to start practicing not being anxious and residing in a place of peace so that we start to make that become normal to us mentally, physically, psychologically, right? So we practice. We find a quiet place. We sit. We just breathe with our eyes open, eyes closed. feeling what it feels like to be peaceful, not to be anxious. And when we keep on practicing that and start to become comfortable being that way, then we start to shift, right? Then we start to shift out of that being that anxious person, right? And maybe now, right, after we do the work and we practice, because we practice subconsciously becoming an anxious person, right? Now we're intentionally practicing not being an anxious person, and maybe then we can start identifying as a peaceful person, right? So this whole idea, right? It kind of sounds, as I'm talking about it, easier said than done for a lot of people, because if we have identified ourselves as an anxious person and we start working to release that, right, then we kind of bring up the question, if I'm not an anxious person anymore, then who am I? I'm losing a huge part of my identity, who I believe that I am. And to a lot of people, that's scary shit, right? That's really scary. If I'm not that, then who am I, right? So here's the beautiful thing, right? The beautiful thing is that we're doing the work, right? And again, if this is scary, right? There are two types of fear in this world. The first fear is one that we all have and that we should all have, and that keeps us safe, right? So say Gwen's just hanging out on like train tracks, right? Train starts coming at her. And, Gwen is like, this is pretty scary. I am very scared. I should probably move so that the train doesn't hit me and kill me, right? So I move, right? That fear we all need to have. The other fear is a debilitating fear that keeps us from living our life, right? I really want to do this thing, but I'm so scared that I just don't feel like I can do it, right? And that keeps us from living our life, right? So how do we get over that, right? We do it being scared as shit, right? And that is actually the definition of being courageous, right? Having courage. Identifying, yes, this is so scary, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to take that leap, right? I'm going to take that step forward, right? And so once we do that, we've just identified it, right? I'm going to take that step forward. Here's the beautiful thing. This is what happens, right? And it naturally happens, right? So we're practicing removing a thing that is really causing us to hurt and suffer and be debilitating in our life, right? Being anxious, right? That's a level of fear too, right? So we are, afraid to lose our identity. So then we realize, right? I'm courageous, right? I'm a courageous person, right? I'm doing it even though I'm afraid. And then once we remove that mindset, that conditioning of being anxious, we free up space within us to create something that we really want to be in our life. Maybe that's just peaceful, right? So many beautiful things happen. You realize that you're this incredibly strong being, you're courageous, you put in the work, you practice it, you change your mindset, you change your conditioning, and now you are reborn, right? To be whatever identity you want to be. So life is not controlling you anymore. Life created, right? Or the experiences that life threw at you created that anxiety, that anxiousness within you. And now you're taking your power back and saying, I don't want to be anxious anymore. I want to be this type of person, right? I want to be just feeling grateful all the time, or just feeling blessed and just honored, right? To be alive, right? And just be having peace within, right? So you can create whatever you want. That's the beautiful thing, right? And you're in the driver's seat of your life, right? You're taking your power back and you're being in control. So once you've freed up, right, all this space, and now you're living your life, right? So that anxious person is one of the big ones, right? Really identifying with them. And again, there's so many, we can probably see now how many subtle ways we kind of do this to ourselves. I do it all the time, and I watch myself do it, and I think it's funny. Like the subtle, as long as we're realizing it, I don't think there's any harm in it, right? As long as we are creating it, we're in the driver's seat, right? So some of the other examples we could be, creating are, someone who always looks for something that's wrong, right? We probably all know those people, the complainers, always looking for something wrong. It's too hot, it's too cold in here, that person did that to me, this is happening, I don't want to do that, this place sucks, right? That type of person, right? If they're not complaining or finding something wrong, right, then they don't feel like themselves, right? But when you're like that, you're missing all the beauty, right? Because you're constantly looking for the wrongs, right? You want to constantly look for the beauty, the rights, the things that in that moment make you feel good, right? A person who has a lot of pain, right? It might be that you are in pain, right? But there are things you can do to help you kind of move away from some pain and realize, if we're constantly looking for the pain, then we're missing out on places that don't have any pain, right? They just kind of fly by us because we're not pulling our attention there, right? And it could be something as simple as I'm a loud person. That's who I am. I'm a loud person, right? You don't need to be a loud person, right? Being a loud person is not a thing, right? So again, right, we can see how our mental, our physical, our psychological parts of us can just subconsciously be pulled into this identity, right? But once we identify it, and it's all with the checking in, right? Really noticing, right? Take a week, right? Take a week and just watch yourself. Be like, oh my gosh, I never even realized I'm a complainer. Oh, it sucks, right? So thank you so much for watching these videos, and I really, really hope that they help in some way, right? This video, my past videos, because that's the only reason why I do it, because I hate being on camera, right? Because I'm not a camera person. So have a beautiful day, everyone. Later.